read this morning, so picking up a little bit last night, for those of you who weren't here last night, we looked at the fact that we are not like the other kingdoms around. We are the people of God. We are a holy nation, a royal priesthood, and the mere fact that you are a follower of Jesus means you are a minister of the gospel. And that's the bottom, being with Jesus. Anything else in terms of ministry, training or what have we, important as that is over and above that relationship with Jesus where we are all called to serve. So I want to pick up a bit on that today to help with this. John chapter 15. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch that doesn't produce fruit, and he prunes the branches that do bear fruit so that they will produce even more. You have already been pruned for greater fruitfulness by the message I have given you. Remain in me, and I will remain in you. For a branch cannot produce fruit if it is severed from the vine, and you cannot be fruitful apart from me. Yes, I am the vine, and you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. That's an interesting passage, particularly in the context when you go back further in chapter 14. Remember, this is Jesus speaking to his disciples the night before he was taken out and murdered on the cross. In chapter 14, as many of you will have heard me speaking over the last little while when I visited you, and I make no apology for repeating some of that here, Jesus makes this astounding claim that if we believe in him and understand in terms of belief from a Jewish context, belief was not often as it is for us, which is an intellectual acceptance of ideas. To say you believed meant that it was worked out in what you did. And so he said, if you believe in me, you will do the same things that I have been doing. Now, it's fun working with the congregation saying, now tell me folks, what are some of the things that Jesus did? And they tell you all the things he did. You write it all up and you say, right, Jesus says that's what you're doing. That's what he's saying. That's what you're doing. And then he goes and makes it worse. And this is one of those passages earlier that I wish was never in the Bible. He said, because I'm going to the Father, you will do greater things. Lord, help me. I'm not even doing the same things, let alone greater. You see, that's because I was reading this from the eyes of our individualistic approach to the faith. Whereas I think Jesus is saying, my body, my people, my royal priesthood, my ministers of the gospel will do the same things that I'm doing. And because my spirit dwells within you, I am in effect multiplied by the number of people here. So the effect will be greater. Because it's like I have been reproduced. And then he comes on to this passage and says, I am the vine. And my Father is the gardener. So I went to my grapevine this morning. We're going to have a horticulture lesson. As you can see, they didn't do too well this year. I'm not quite sure why. They're normally big fat bunches, and I've got a colleague at work whose husband comes and picks them and makes wine. He gave me a bottle last year, but something went wrong and I took the top off it to try it and it exploded all over the kitchen. So I never got to try. But Jesus says in this passage, remain in me. Now, if you can look carefully at a vine or a tree or anything, you will see that the branches here, this is what's the left of the main branch off the vine, is firmly locked in here. You can see where I've pruned it at other times. And when I've cut off this one, new growth has popped out here. And when I next prune it, you see, I'll look down here and I'll say, there's a bud there that's going to produce good things, and I'll do that. Alas, poor branch, I knew you well. You are now no good. I just got to pick you up and throw you out or burn you, because you have been severed from the vine. Do you see what Jesus is saying? And then when the vine grows, and you know what grapevines are like, if you don't prune them, they're all over the place. I go along and I look along the vine and I see there's a bunch there, and as you can see, I thought, well, that bunch needs a bit of help, so I've chopped the extra growth off here so that we'll go into there. And Jesus said, my word prunes you. But my word only prunes you when you actually hear it and take note and apply it. When you believe what it says and you stake your time on it. And the other thing that's interesting to note is where the branch comes out of the main part of the vine and where this bit comes out of the main vine, that's actually the strongest point. Because it's the bit that has to take all the strain when the weight comes on, when the wind blows, when the rain falls and the vine gets heavy. That's what holds it. And I came to this in terms of the building of the old sailing ships. When they built the ribs of the sailing ships out of oak, they went to the oak tree and they looked for the branch that came out from the trunk at the right point, at the right angle. And that's the bit they used for the ribs because they knew that was the strongest. And if you've ever tried to cut wood where a branch has come out of a trunk, you know what happens when the axe hits that point. The jubber goes right through your body. And the interesting thing about this is, you know, and I sometimes think we need to get there. And Jesus is actually saying, you're already there, just remain there. He has grafted us in. Paul uses that image in Romans about us being grafted in. He uses a fig tree, but any bush will do. And so we are, because of our faith in Jesus, our trust in Him, we are already grafted into this vine. And Jesus isn't saying, get there, get there, get there, and we good Protestants feel that we've got to work hard and agonise about being connected to Jesus. He says, you're already connected to me. And you're connected to me at the strongest point. That's where the greatest strength is. Remain there. Because when you remain there, fruit will grow. This is not doing anything anymore. Basically, this is not what repentance is at. It's been chopped off. That's already got a bit missing there. It's obviously not got the nourishment. Remain in me, he said. I'm the vine. You're the branches. Those who remain in me will bear much fruit. What's the fruit? Well, as Peter Chain reminded me the other day, some people say the fruit is the fruit of the Spirit, the characteristics of the life of Jesus developing it. Others say that it's the results of the work that we see fruited for the kingdom that the church grows. And you know, both are right. But if we're trying to bear fruit for the kingdom without allowing the fruit of the Spirit to develop, we're pushing water uphill with a rake. That's what Jesus is meaning. But if our primary responsibility in our Christian walk is a life of worship focused on Jesus, whereby the Spirit of Jesus dwelling within us is able to change and mould us more and more into His likeness, then not only will the fruit of the Spirit, the characteristics of Jesus, take deeper root in our life and our heart, but the outflow of that is the ministry of Jesus in our community. So our focus shouldn't be on the growth of the church. Our growth should be on the worship of God and the living into the life of Jesus, and the growth of the church results from that. It is not the reason for it. It is the outworking of God's people being that way. So I want to encourage you, because the next thing Jesus says, which is the last part here, for apart from me, you can do, what's the word? Nothing. And I don't read Greek, but I can read English and what other people say that the Greek says, and I have to rely on them. And what I was reading on this one, the commentator was saying, the Greek word for nothing means nothing. Absolutely nothing. Zilch. Service for Jesus does actually make us tired, but at the same time, it energizes us. If you are just bone weary, may I suggest to you that you take some time out and say, Lord, where are you in what I'm doing? And as we go through the business of today, as we pass the reports, and particularly the funding reports, now you may have received funding, you may not have received funding, you may have received less than you want, and you may be feeling in various ways of grumpiness or whatever. Let me ask you this question, whether you receive any funding, part funding or no funding. Is Jesus involved in what you are doing and what you're wanting to do? I reckon we should put on our forms of application, please describe to us how you discerned that Jesus is involved in this. Because I want to encourage you and think about this seriously, and I can tell you this from experience. I haven't time to tell you all the stories that gives that experience. But if God has placed something in your heart and Jesus is in the midst of it, whether the Synod gives you funding, part funding or no funding, it is going to happen. One member of Synod said to me a while back, where is the faith in Synod? Because we have these resources. Applications come in, if you don't get this funding, will this work continue? No. Well, where's Jesus in there? If Jesus is calling, if Jesus is leading, then he requires of us to step forward in faith as we discern his voice, and the resources that we need will be done. Question I like asking congregations is, or two really, in terms of church, why do you want more people to come? Why do you want more people to come to church? And we have all these highfalutin ideas about it. And I'm cynical enough, because I've been in the church long enough, to say, is it really because you want to meet the budgets so that you can continue to do the things you've always done in the way you've always done it? And there's some silence for a minute, and there's nodding of heads and saying, yeah, actually. Well, is that the reason to do it? God knows how to get hold of Presbyterians. It's through our pocket. Catches our attention, and he's catching our attention now because the world is changing. And brothers and sisters, if we are not standing firmly in Jesus, on the rock that is him, as the old hymn says, all other ground is sinking sand. It's not going to get easier for us as the people of God in this land. It's not going to be easy for us. And we're going to have to know that we are standing in Jesus. And he says, you are in me. Remain in me. Because apart from me, you can do nothing. So let that be our guide for the day as we think. And so